and welcome to your weekly interval. This is the Best Damn Nerd Show on the 10 Media Network, the worldwide leader in all of streaming entertainment. I'm your host, microphone alchemist Bimbo Jimbo. With me tonight, Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd.
Howdy, partner.
Good to see you there. I'll be your Huckleberry all night long, Jeff. And Chief Science Officer of Star Labs, Mark Truex.
There's a snake in my boot.
Hey, for those of you that are just listening, Mark has like a Buzz Lightyear or something like that in the shot.
Dude,
That's
totally.
really
It's totally appropriate.
That wasn't there last week. I don't understand what you're doing.
Totally appropriate for Shadows of Brimstone.
As far as Easter eggs go, pretty lame. It's like that post-credit scene with Tony Stark getting therapy from the Hulk.
For those who know, no.
Yeah. Well, now you know, and knowing is half the
Those
battle.
of us who
Welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show, everybody. The main topic tonight will be Shadows of Brimstone, which is just absolutely exquisite, extravagant, outlandish, and amazing board game near and dear to Jeff, Mark, and I's hearts. And so we're going to set that up for you. But before we dive into Shadows of Brimstone, I want to talk about board games and the board game community a little bit more in the abstract and the sort of bigger picture. Jeff, you really are sort of the game master of the Best Damn Nerd Show. I mean, to the point where I tried to pass off Pathfinder to you just because you already had all the games. I figured I wouldn't even play it with anybody else. Might as well just leave it with you.
Just give me your games.
Yeah, exactly. You can have them. I give up.
I didn't want it. That's how many I have.
It's incredible. It's incredible. But how did you sort of first start getting tapped into the board game community and everything? How'd that come about?
Oh boy. I guess I've been playing board games for a very long time, like since childhood. I was a big like Monopoly and Risk fan when I was very young. And then I'd say the game that, the big gateway game that got me into it was HeroQuest, which I got for my 10th birthday. It's a Milton Bradley Games Workshop collaboration. It's a real gateway game into getting into Warhammer in general, or Dungeons and Dragons, because there's the person that kind of controls all the villains, dictates the story, and then everybody else plays a hero, but it's much more streamlined, very simple, very kid-friendly. And I think that's how I fell in love with Sword and Sorcery. I think that's how I fell in love with board games in general.
We reflected on our Comic-Con memories, and one that we didn't bring up on the show is, I forget which Comic-Con it even was, but we were staying at Mark's house, and it was just us at Mark's house, and we started playing HeroQuest there. And was that like probably only our second session at that point in time?
It was
2012.
It was 2012. It was the year before Mark started going with us. We were pretty. Wait. No, you had never played HeroQuest before, because I originally brought it to the hotel, and if we had started earlier, Davis and John would have joined us in it. But they left Friday night, and then we just didn't play it Saturday. And then we brought it to Mark's when we were staying at Mark's, and then we played it like all through Monday morning and afternoon.
God,
and you were hooked. HeroQuest, it's broken up into different quests or adventures, and you can play it with two people. I was basically all of the monsters and the storyteller, and James played all of the four heroes: the barbarian, the wizard, the dwarf, and the elf. And
it is
it's
an
so much fun.
absolutely fantastic game, and that's we may have mentioned it that I guess that the wizard character became Dick Hatch the Broke. we did mention that. But yeah, if you haven't checked out HeroQuest, that is probably my favorite board game that I've ever played. And I love Shadows of Brimstone, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. But in terms of just pure enjoyment, I think HeroQuest still is at the top of my list.
HeroQuest is still near the top of my list, and a lot of gamers I know, it's kind of the same thing. Some people, they revisit it again and they go, it's too simple, it's just too childish to a certain degree. They want something a little more advanced. They want something a little more integrated, that type of thing, a little more complex. I like the simplicity of it, because especially playing with someone like you, James, the two of us just sort of get each other as far as how we want the narrative to go, how much more we build into it. And so, we have a great time. I mean, we really can do everything we want with HeroQuest, but for some people, I think they're more just limited by the rules, and they want something more advanced, like a Descent or a Shadows of Brimstone,
Yeah.
or
Twilight Imperium.
Oh boy, you want something advanced?
Too much. Too
Yeah,
much.
you want to play a 12-hour game where you hate, like, if people think Monopoly and Risk ruin friendships, Twilight Imperium, I mean, I'd kill a man over that game. And then kill myself.
Yeah, first time I played Twilight, it was like, I think 4 hours in, and I went twice.
Yeah, no, that's
like,
Typical. Twilight Imperium.
Ship.
We'll never do a
gathered
Twilight
resources.
Imperium episode because we'll never play it as a group. I'm morbidly fascinated by that game, but I know that I don't have enough people in my life to play it, and you need minimum 3 people. So I can't even convince one person to play with me. I need at least 2.
It's funny. It was early on. Well, once you, I guess, moved back to Southern California, but sort of becoming aware even before HeroQuest that Jeff had access to all these really cool sounding games that I had never played before, like Fury of Dracula and stuff like that. And I remember, Jeff, you told me a story. I forget who you were with, but essentially you went through the whole rigmarole of setting up this elaborate Dracula game. And then by the time you were done, somebody's like, I don't really feel like playing. Unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. If you commit to playing, first of all, you have some other poor bastard that's setting up the whole thing for you, and then you're just going to decide out of the blue to not play anymore. Absolutely unacceptable.
There have been times when I'm setting up a game where I almost lose interest halfway through. I'm like, you know what? We're just doing it anyway. Fuck
Arkham
it.
Horror.
Yeah. Oh God, Arkham Horror is a lot like that. It was so much easier when I lived alone because it's like, you know what? I'm just going to leave this out on the dining room table. It's going to get played at some point in the next few days or weeks. Screw it. But I was doing that with Resident Evil just last week. Resident Evil 2, the board game, where I set it up and it's like I didn't play it for 2 days. And I mean, the wife didn't yell at me because she didn't need to use the table, but I was just like, I don't feel like doing it now.
How did you get into sort of, in both of you and Mark, have sort of gone from just being board game players to board game supporters in the Kickstarter community? How did that sort of come about? Because that's we're going to talk a little bit more about that specifically to Shadows of Brimstone, but later on we'll get into that. But the Kickstarter aspect of board games, what led you down that road? And we'll start with you, Jeff, and then kick it over to Mark.
The online community for board games in general is great. So for the longest time, I was just a big supporter of Fantasy Flight Games because they have great customer service. They have a lot of good products. Fury of Dracula was one of them at one time. Being on Board Game Geek and just the different pages for all the different board games and user interactions and stuff like that, that made me become more cognizant of what was going on and how board games right now are sort of in that golden age. Like they're pumping them out nonstop, and Kickstarter is a great website and just it's a great way for different companies, big and small, to kind of springboard a lot of ideas. And so it wasn't that long until I started getting into that based on all of the forums and stuff on Board Game Geek. And then based on the sales pitch and what I saw and the company's reputation and interactions with people and stuff like that, that's what got me to start investing in certain games on Kickstarter. Especially, there are so many exclusives and not everything necessarily goes to the stores, or it's very limited, or you want to play the game earlier than other people. So, I mean, that's how I got into that. And Shadows of Brimstone was a big one that brought me to Kickstarter. And then now, because of that, I get the email suggestions as far as things I might be interested in. And there's certain companies that I really like or ideas that I'm just a fan of.
What was the first game you backed?
It was Shadows of Brimstone Forbidden Fortress, because I had missed out on the first Shadows of Brimstone. I was in grad school at the time. I don't even know if I would have really been able to afford the Minecraft pledge anyway, because I was a pauper. So back when I was paying for school. So I was so bummed. I ran into Shadows of Brimstone at a game shop, and I was like, whoa, this looks amazing. And then I looked at it and I saw that you had to assemble the figures, which is something I had never done before. I was never a tabletop. I mean, I was never like a war game guy, even though I love Games Workshop. I was always a board game guy. So I never assembled figures. I just played stuff out of the box. So that was intimidating, but the premise was so cool. And I really liked the Weird West, where it's the Wild West with like a horror or sci-fi or just bizarre theme. And that's everything that Shadows of Brimstone is. So I regretted not backing it on Kickstarter when it first came out. When Forbidden Fortress, their next big Kickstarter promotion, came out, they had a tier level where you would get everything from the first Kickstarter pledge if you wanted to throw in that much money. And it was a lot. But I mean, in the long run, you're saving if you would buy everything else, which eventually I would have done in the stores anyway. And at that point, I was single, I had a lot of money, and I had nothing to do with it. So I said, you know what, I'm going to go for it because I really
baby.
Yeah, I regretted not doing it in the first place, and now I'm actually there and available to do it. So I bought I think it was called like the Gold Pledge or something for Forbidden Fortress, so people could look that up and see how much I blew. Yeah, it was a lot of money, and it was a lot of merchandise. My God, it was a tidal wave of stuff when it finally came in. But it was super exciting. The funny thing is, though, it came so late that I backed a couple of other things that came to me before that eventually mailed out.
I guess... Well, we'll leave it there. I don't want to ask you personal questions about how much money you dumped into Shadows of Brimstone, but as you said, it's a lot. Did they at least hook you up with like some T-shirts and like?
It wasn't
are
cheap.
You swagged out?
No, but I mean, there's certain things I have that like you can't buy or you don't have access to. Still, I mean, there are certain things that just still aren't on the open market. And I mean,
Jeff gets
even the Western
to
stuff that's old.
Like the Eyes Wide Shut party that Shadows of Brimstone hosts every year. Fidelia.
I mean, Flying Frog Productions does have its own convention. I've always wanted to go up to Seattle at the time, but
they know you there. Oh, Mr. Bud, please, we have your suite prepared for you. Mark, how about you?
So, growing up, loved a variety of games. Most importantly, Risk, and on top of that, Risk 2210 was probably like my defining board game in high school.
Going to the moon.
Going to the moon, and you got all the commanders.
Ocean cities.
The
moon was where it was at.
Nah.
Start a new society.
Easy to attack. Hard
moon
to
always failed. Moon failed all the time. But absolutely loved that game. That kind of evolved later on. I had a friend group in the last few years of doing lots of board game circles with, and we even opened up Risk Legacy, which if you guys don't know about Risk Legacy, it's a Risk game.
Invited to that.
Far away, kid. But Risk Legacy, you play where the board game actually evolves with every war that transpires as you play, and you can play up to 10 rounds, or rather 10 games with the same crew of people, where it evolves. Like,
it's like
ultimately
in like fantasy football.
Yeah, it's like there's one card that allows you to like drop a nuke, and forever on the board you put a nuclear disaster token on the territory that was bombed out, and now no longer people can pass through without getting radiation poisoning and losing half their troops. You can establish new islands. Eventually there's like Martians that land, and there's all these like secret envelopes that can't be opened until you satisfy a certain thing. Like until the first player gets killed from a game, you can't open this packet. And once you do, it like unveils all these other results, and you can fortify territories with walls and things like that, and it lives on every single game. It's like you permanently rip up cards, you mark all over the board, you get to name continents. So in my game of Legacy, there was not only a continent named Truex, there was also Truex 2.
What a creative name.
Exactly.
Just like when Mark and I used to play Roller Coaster Tycoon. The best name he came up with for his coaster was The Doom.
The Doom. But if to Victor
Naming
go the spoils, and when I won, Risk Legacy, I got to name a continent, or I got to do something else, add an extra continent bonus to one of the continents, things like that. And it's not really until Jeff and I started playing a lot more games, because Jeff has such a wonderful collection, loves to bring out new things, that I started diving deeper into some of the other communities like Kickstarter. And the first game I ever backed was one that I discovered at San Diego Comic-Con in the board game room with you, James. It was the Thug Life from Horseshoe Games, which finally came 2 years later. My God.
Was that it took 2 years?
It took 2 years.
Yeah, we'll get into delays and stuff like that vis-a-vis Brimstone later.
But after that, I'm constantly looking at Kickstarter for things like that in different games, because you go to the store, unless you're going to like a very specific game store. But you go to any other store where you're shopping, it's always the same things over and over, various versions of Pie Face or whatever. Lots of kids games. That's where my attention goes.
You have a child.
But yeah. And Kickstarter, though, there's so many different wild and fun different concepts that come through there that you just wouldn't happen upon otherwise. So absolutely love that. And then same thing with a Board Game Geek. Jeff likewise turned me on to that when I was playing, was it a Justice League Axis of Villains, which is basically like a Castle Panic game where you are a team. It's a team game where the board constantly has this wave after wave of villains spreading from the outside of the board, attacking the tower in the center. In this case, it's Justice League, so it's the Watchtower, and it's, you know, villains like Joker, Lex Luthor, things like that. Every turn they progress further and further closer to the Watchtower, and you got to defeat them. And he showed it to me where there was this whole community online where people were designing new characters you can play, because the game only comes with the base set of 4 heroes. But instead of just being Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, and the Flash, you can have an Aquaman set, you can have a Wonder Woman set, you can have a Shazam set, and all these other subsequent villains and their abilities and so forth. And that's become just a huge resource for me, because little fact about me, I love going to the swap meet. I love deals. I refuse to pay full price. But buying a board game at the swap meet is a little bit like rolling the dice in the bad way, where you can get an awesome game and literally no dice, or you can get an awesome game and no instruction manual.
Oh.
And I came across such one for a Lone Wolf and Cub.
Nice.
Yeah, which is this awesome one, could be a 2-player, but really it's like a 1-player game where you're Lone Wolf and Cub, like going through trying to get redemption and honor and just slaying baddies. But when I got it, like, it was missing the actual rule book. It had the entire storybook for if you're, you know, do this, choose your own adventure style of thing. Like, do you fight the Ronin or not? Turn to page this and then read the story, and that's the battle you got to do. But the actual rules were missing. Board Game Geek got me those rules. Finding the community there, just the random few people that actually had that game from the 80s. Someone scanned a copy in and sent it to me. So awesome community there for the board game.
Incredibly helpful community, incredibly creative community. I really love interacting with people on those forums. They're awesome. I go there almost on a daily basis to just either games I own, games I want to own, or just random games.
Look at that, Board Game Geek and Kickstarter. Those ones are for free. You get some promos there going for you. So, you know, enjoy the freebies. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we are going to get into Shadows of Brimstone proper, its background, some of the mechanics, and you know, some of the maybe controversies surrounding Shadows of Brimstone. But more on that when we come back on the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. Bimbo Jimbo, Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd, and Chief Science Officer of Star Labs Mark Truex with you tonight. And we are going to get into Shadows of Brimstone now, which it's, you know, as a layman, not a lawman, but a layman in terms of explaining Shadows of Brimstone, it is that weird Wild West sort of cowboy science fiction fusion game that we were talking a little bit about before the break. But Jeff, give the juice goose to all our listeners in terms of what really Shadows of Brimstone is all about from a backstory standpoint, because I remember before playing it, you telling me about it, and I was like, I gotta play this fucking game. And, you know, I think you got it right around the time when we were still into Westworld, or, you know, around that time period too. So Cowboys were very big with us at the moment.
I backed it while we were watching season 1. And then since I was backing Forbidden Fortress, the Western stuff came pretty early. So yeah, we were still very much invested in Westworld at the time. For people that aren't too familiar with the Weird West genre, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr., or the role-playing game Deadlands, those are other things that take place in the Weird West. It's basically cowboys going up against supernatural or sci-fi.
Wild West?
Yeah, Wild Wild West actually is part of the Weird West also, because of like the weird technological stuff. It's kind of like steampunk a little bit, but it doesn't have to be steampunk. Kind of like Wild Wild West, the TV show, because they went against like bizarre things and stuff like that. With Shadows of Brimstone, it kind of is mimicking the Gold Rush, but instead of discovering gold, it's this old prospector discovers this very weird stone, and they just call it darkstone. And it's kind of like this great energy source. It's, you know, beyond coal, beyond oil. If you've ever played Warhammer games, Mordheim is a game where it has to do with Weirdstone. It's almost the exact same thing. And so people flood to this town of Brimstone, which is where it's near the mines where all this darkstone is found. And people are just mining it like crazy. And at first, there's no big deal. And there's all this great technological advancement. The problem is it's almost like corrupt or evil by definition and its nature. And so the more of it you accumulate and put it in one spot, all of a sudden, like this great portal opened up into another world. And just like these monsters came pouring out. And Brimstone was wiped out and it just wiped off the face of the earth and is just like this desolate wasteland now. So that's why the game is called Shadows of Brimstone. It takes place after that because people still want the Darkstone. And more portals are opening up. So you have people that either want to collect the Darkstone for personal profit. You have people that are trying to just protect the world because they're good people. You have people who are trying to take advantage of the situation. And you have people who are trying to gain power. And then also there's just all these different worlds and monsters. And because portals open up to all these various worlds, it's kind of like the sky's the limit as far as what the game can expand to. I'm talking about the Wild West, but every world is very different. One of them is like this jungle world where you go against like these snake men and it's like Aztec tribe type stuff. Another one, the Targa Plateau. It's like this frozen,
Been
desolate, frozen desolate wasteland where there was an advanced alien civilization, but they're wiped out now, but their technology is still intact. It's kind of like the Dwemer in Skyrim. All of their stuff is still intact. So if you go to any of their locations, you have to go against like their robot sentries and all of that. And you're going there to get like guns and technology and then bringing it back and selling it in 1800s America. But and those are just two of the basic worlds that it comes with, but it's expanded so much more than that, and it's taken so many different things from pop culture. And the derelict ship is very much like
Event Horizon.
Event Horizon, thank you. Yeah, it's this. You're in this spaceship where it was powered by Darkstone, and it comes from this advanced society sometime in the future with humanity, where things went well and then it went really bad. And you're just dealing with all of the fallout basically from this spaceship that is now empty. Yeah,
it's a lot like Event Horizon. There, you don't need.
It's incredibly creepy, and I mean, it's not a direct parallel, but it's very close. A lot of it is very close, and I love all that stuff. And those are just three of the worlds, but yeah, I mean, that's the basic story.
Yeah,
and so your character is whatever you want it to be in that world, whether you're a hero or you're somebody just trying to advance a little bit on your own selfishly.
Yeah, and we'll get into sort of some of the different characters that you can play as in a little bit. But what about the sort of the play style of the game? What is it comparable to?
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's very comparable to Warhammer Quest. If you've ever played that back, I think it's like Games Workshop 1995, and they have a new game now that's exactly the same. But most dungeon crawlers kind of play the same way. You place tiles down on a table. So like place a tile down, it's the room that you start in. Then maybe you roll the dice, you draw a card, and then that's the next tile. So it's an ever-evolving dungeon. It's never the same thing twice. And you never know what's kind of around the corner. There's a lot of cards that you draw from that either tell you about a specific event or it tells you how many exits there are, different monsters that you encounter. It's very randomized, but the system is incredibly complex, but so intuitive. It's beautiful to watch it play out, honestly.
It's the word I keep coming back to, and I'm sure I'll mention it a few more times, is it's dynamic.
Yeah.
In how it's sort of once you set it up, how it builds out and everything like that. And we'll get more into that as we go along. But you have in your notes that I'm referring to here, because again, Jeff, if not the Imperial Commissar, he would be the game master of the Best Damn Nerd Show. A hobby game versus a board game. Can you elaborate on the differences there?
Okay, yeah. So this is kind of going back to what I was talking about before, where, with a board game, usually you open up the box and it's ready to play. Either you're shuffling cards, you're rolling dice, you have your pieces. With a hobby game, maybe you have to assemble figures or you have to put things together. Everything in the box is still all you need to play at least the basic game. And that is the case with Shadows of Brimstone. But yeah, the figures have to be assembled and they're small. I mean, they're tiny little pieces just like this, which it was really intimidating for a board game player like myself. It's like, do I really want to get into a hobby game where I have to remove the pieces from a sprue? I have to glue it together. It's like, eventually I would want to paint it maybe. It's kind of like this perfect bridge between the two different hobbies, because they're usually very different people that are in the game store.
It's funny that you bring that up in terms of the intimidation factor. Big fan of Warhammer 40K growing up. And I bought a lot of 40K Space Marines. So it was a Blood Angel, chapter myself. Loved Sanguinius, our fallen Primarch, and everything like that. But the
fallen, interesting word.
Fallen as in slain, not fallen to chaos.
The man's a mutant.
Well, he's an angel. But the 40K deal, in terms of having to assemble them, which I could do fine, but when it came to painting them, I had no skill in terms of that. So that was prohibitive to me. So as James Kincaid does, I got into the lore of 40K instead. And I spent my time reading more of, the books rather than actually playing with the models that I had. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, with 40K, so I remember then, because I got a few pieces too, and some starter sets for Space Marines and whatnot with you, but I've actually never played a game of 40K. I just painted. I built the models and I painted them, and I geeked out on that with my little fine brush. Yeah, Black Templar all day.
Yeah, I like the Black Templar.
Oh, that's too. Good chapter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, never played. But the figures are great.
You had the hardest part down, Mark.
Because, now you can play.
Yeah, you can actually play. The thing for me is, going to this game, it was called Epic Worlds, which is this great card and hobby game store that I loved, but it was intimidating because you had these guys that are playing games like this with their fully painted, ornate armies that they had stuff. It's like, I'm not going to roll
grown
with,
men.
my scrub painted armies and everything like that. Yeah, well, and now we're grown men talking about it. So it's all come full circle, Mark. Don't
it's time
hate
to
on
crush
it.
them.
I think you should get your models out and go play. But like you were talking about, is that Shadows of Brimstone is kind of like the best of both worlds when it comes to the board game and hobby game sort of genre, with that setup. But Flying Frog Productions and its Kickstarter, we mentioned that earlier. What are some of the controversies? Because I remember, I talked Shadows of Brimstone with you long before I actually got to play Shadows of Brimstone with you. So what's the deal?
It all stems from their first Kickstarter, which I think was in 2013, and it blew up, and I think it blew up a lot more than they thought it would, because it is a cool story, it's a cool premise, and they kept promising more and more with all of the goals. Once you raise a certain amount of money, it unlocks like a new goal for everybody and stuff like that. So they were just throwing more and more in, and it got to the point where everything was over, the money was collected, and it's like, now we actually have to make all of this stuff. And I mean,
you got to deliver, assholes.
Yeah, and it's not that they didn't, it's just that it takes a long time, especially for some small Washington State company that, it's like, this was a very big project. And I mean, they have other games in their company. So
yeah, is Fortune and Glory one of theirs too?
Fortune and Glory and was it Taste of Evil or something like that? I've never played. I played Fortune and Glory. You and I have played Fortune and Glory before. I bought that game too. I mean, Shadows of Brimstone even opened me up to Flying Frog Productions, and it's like, oh, I want to buy some more of their products. So what happened was they also start unleashing other Kickstarters before they're done fulfilling the last one, which I think it's kind of a faux pas in Kickstarter, and I think other people agree with that. And you start getting people that will donate just $1 so that they can then be a part of the conversation on Kickstarter. And they'll say stuff like, actually, I live in Italy and I haven't received any of my stuff yet from the original Kickstarter. So I would recommend that nobody back Forbidden Fortress. And there was a lot of that. They're a Washington State company. So if you live in America, shipping wise, not that hard. You're the first people that are going to get fulfilled. And you always see that as far as the description of the product and everything that you need to know about Kickstarter. And remember, you're not pre-ordering, you're an investor, and that's a whole other thing. And so, America will get it, or maybe not even America, but North America will receive everything at a certain point, and then it says rest of the world, and good luck with that. And Australia, Australia and New Zealand, I know they were punished heavily, and it took them a very long time. Yeah, Adam Zika's homeland was those guys. They invested their money, and it took them a very long time. I invested in Forbidden Fortress at the end of 2016, and I received my stuff from their first Kickstarter campaign before people who invested in the first Kickstarter got theirs. So
good for you.
I mean, that's a kick in the ass to people that, invested in that first one, and it does suck. And then the other problem is they don't communicate that much on Kickstarter. They're not giving the weekly updates. They're not giving the monthly updates. They're not, they're not giving the quarterly updates necessarily. You hear a lot of communication from them when they're collecting your money, when they're asking you to pledge. As soon as it's over, they say, hey, great, we met our goals. This is what we can expect. Here's the general timeline. And that always changes with any Kickstarter project. Mark knows that. And then it takes them a very long time to get back to you. And then sometimes they get back to you and it's very limited as far as the new information that they have to share. I've gotten so much from them that it's like it hasn't been a personal problem for me, but my heart does go out to the people that have kind of been, a little bit screwed over, because you also have those people that white knight the company and they're like, oh, well, they don't owe you any sort of obligation and this isn't pre-ordering and blah, 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 blah. Because, the merchandise also started hitting the racks. It was in stores before people who invested in it got it. And it's like, well, you're not pre-ordering, you're an investor. Well, if I'm an investor, shouldn't my questions be answered? Shouldn't they be communicating with me on a regular basis? I feel as an investor
in this product.
Yeah, I feel as an investor, I actually would, be
entitled to
I
more.
I should be entitled to more communication and more information, rather than the case. Like I said, I came to the party late, and I have so many products that it's like I don't need to worry about, when other things are going to happen. But the people that did invest initially, I do feel bad for them. And I think Flying Frog Productions, they're big enough now, and it doesn't really take much to log in and just talk to people. And I'm sorry if they're shy or they're upset about some of the mean things that people say. But, I mean, deal with it. You guys are, handling money. It's like, gig. Yeah, exactly. It's part of the gig. And you guys are making a lot of money off of a lot of people. So I think it's okay to talk to them and hear what it is that they have to say, and understand why it is that they're upset.
My Kickstarter dollars pay your salary.
I mean, yeah, that's the case. If you guys don't need the Kickstarter, if you could just take your products and invest your own money in them and then put it in stores and then, return, like the way Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers, that's sort of the kick in the ass with Kickstarter. It's really awesome at first, but now, us as the consumer, we're spending over $100 on a single board game. And not all of it is like really quality controlled. Shadows of Brimstone, it's a higher quality, although it's gotten better. Some of the miniatures are kind of crap from the original game compared to like what came out with Forbidden Fortress. And I'm not going to throw any other companies under the bus, but I mean, some of them, they produce like real crap. And it's like, if it was back when you had to invest, like if a big board game company had to invest in that and then it was going to be put in shelves on Toys R Us, I mean, all we got was the high quality stuff when we were kids. And that's because a lot of things were weeded out. Kickstarter takes it straight to the consumer. And because of that, there's a lot less quality control.
It is the Wild West, ironically enough. Mark, you had a point to make.
Yeah. So having just finished my first Kickstarter and backing of the Thug Life game right here, where you can hustle to become king of the street. Yeah, it took, I want to say, over 2 years to fulfill. Even then, it ended up shipping late on it. And
nice guys, by the time, Con.
Very nice guys. And by the time it finally arrived, I had just moved, so there was like extra debacle about like, oh crap, they don't have my proper address. Did it ship out? Did it not? Because everything was so delayed.
That's life in the street, homie.
Yeah, but bless them at Horseshoe, they were able to rectify it and send it out. But just like you said about people in other countries, I actually got an update yesterday from the game saying, yeah, export markets, sorry, you're not getting your games yet. There's been too many complications with COVIDs and all that. Like, we'll see you on the other sid of it, sort of thing. And I'm still, and I'm still like waiting for a final piece of the game as far as fulfillments go. There's in the game, whoever like the ringleader of the session is called the big boss, right? So you like flip the cards and control the scene and things like that each turn. And there's an actual token that they made as this 3D printed like sugar skull that hasn't been sent out to anyone. That was like the final Kickstarter level to get to, like final achievement was to get these 3D molded big boss tokens. And so the update was, hey, these were finally made, but because of COVID, none of them are painted, so you can paint them yourself, and no one in the export markets is getting their stuff. But as far as like the quality of it, one thing that I thought was really cool on Kickstarter, at least for this project I backed, is how I went from playtesting the game in a very rudimentary setting where it's like, here's like a bunch of, tiled or rather like step and repeat pieces. So it's like you all have your home base boards and they were all exactly identical. Here's a bunch of like the weapon tokens. Here's, the dice. It's just some sticker on some dice, stuff like that. But as the Kickstarter progressed and more investors came in and those achievements were like unlocked, now you got sculpted dice that were engraved. Now you had individual boards developed. Now you had extra characters assigned and new gangs developed and things like that actually added to the overall quality. And eventually, I think like the pie in the sky was to get to 3D modeled.
I remember they mentioned that at Comic-Con. That was their ideal, what they wanted to do with it, but just it was prohibitive cost-wise.
Yeah. But what was really neat too, I mean, it would have been cool to get there because I'm a fan of a nice plastic figure. But even for the Kickstarters, after the Kickstarter closed and hit their goal, and now it's like, all right, we're off to production for like 18 months or whatever the projection was. They still had a digital version that they gave to everyone in like PDF for you to print and play at home if you wanted.
That's pretty cool.
Here's a digital version of the board printed up. Here's the tokens you can do. Here's like the cards you can play. You can have at it now. That's not quite the same feel, but it's pretty cool to be able to have that.
Yeah, that is very cool. All right, before we take another break, Jeff, you mentioned at the top of this segment a few of the expansions. I wanted you to go over maybe some that we missed that you wanted to touch on here. That Shadows of Brimstone really has just this sort of wide breadth of worlds and expansions that they've done now. Like just for my reference, playing with you, I didn't even really, I guess, kind of realize at the time that I was playing beyond the base game right at the start in terms of even just visiting the towns. That like we'll talk about this more, but my favorite part of probably the whole game is going to town and experiencing things in towns. And in the base game, it was a much more simplified town setup. I didn't really realize that, so I'm glad you started me out where I needed to be.
Yeah. So the different phases of the game are you either play like a quest or you're traveling in between where the quest took place in the mines or to a frontier town. And in the base game, it's very cookie cutter frontier town. They all look exactly the same. They have the same buildings like general store, saloon, church, doctor's office, all of that. One of the expansions, and it's the expansion that I recommend and a lot of other players of Brimstone recommend that you buy almost right off the bat, is Frontier Town. And it increases like the amount of travel hazards that you come across when you're traveling to the town. It has variation in size where you could visit a small town, medium-sized town, or a large town. A lot more different locations. Your favorite, James, would be the gambling hall. You can do some gambling in the saloon. The gambling hall has a lot of other games, some really fun ones. Devil's Dice alone.
Yeah, you're an avid Devil's Dice player, Jeff.
Devil's Dice is my game because it's
you're
physically just rolling the dice.
You to roll for me.
Yeah, and we picked up some pretty cool artifacts. I got a cool sword out of that. I'm trying to think what else. But anyway, yeah, Frontier Town, it takes that experience and it increases it to a whole other degree, completely changes how you play that portion of the game, makes it a lot more fun. They actually even they have a set list of quests where you could just stay in town and play a quest, including the duel at high noon, where it's just you versus one other guy.
Happened like really early on.
It happens with one of the travel hazards if you're trying to track down that criminal for the dying U.S. Marshal, which is super awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And then also, yeah, you could always run into trouble in town where you end up like, having to duel somebody as well. And it's not all good stuff. The town is incredibly dangerous. I mean, it's safer than your typical adventure, but it is it can be a really bad place for you. And then so you always got to stay on your toes, but it's a lot of fun.
I feel like in some ways the town, when something goes bad in there, it's almost more lasting than something that goes wrong in a quest in certain ways.
Well, I mean, the game is designed where you can't stick around in town forever because there's the increasing chance that bad things are going to come. So it's like you got to get going, you got to keep moving. Otherwise, you could really power up in just one town stay if you could stay there indefinitely. Especially you at the gambling hall could have always funded our stay because you were always making more than enough money than we needed to stay at the hotel.
Flush with cash.
Exactly.
I wish I was that rich in real life.
Me too. So it's like be a part of your entourage. But yeah, I mean, the weapons and everything you can buy. So yeah, bad things start to happen more and more the longer you stay, and then it pushes you out. Oh, and then the other thing besides the size of the town is the type of town. Rather than it just being your generic frontier town, it could be a mining town, like a river town, like you're a trade port. So there's a steamboat with a gambling hall on it.
Favorite town.
Mutant town, where it's basically people who have been mutated by the darkstone, which I don't think we talked about. It has a corrupting influence on you, where it can cause you to have these mutations, like grow a second head, have tentacles, that sort of thing. There's a whole town where it's just those are the refugees go there. It's just a bunch of mutants where they don't persecute each other.
And don't most of the towns have like the mutant quarter as well?
That
so
came
like
with the Frontier Town expansion where you could have a mutant quarter in the town, which is awesome. And if you go to a mutant town, it always has the mutant quarter, obviously, so that you can go visit it. And then when you go to these locations, you have to roll to see what happened to you that day. You can't just visit the shops and stuff. So one of the things that happens in the mutant quarter, if you roll low, is one of us, where the mutants grab you and throw you into a vat of melted darkstone, and you have to roll for a mutation that you get. They just, you become one of them, whether you like it or not.
And one of the things in the game, if you get the same mutation you already have, you die, right?
Yeah, that way it's to decrease you playing around with mutations or getting over your head. The only hero that can circumvent that is the U.S. Marshal, unless that's been changed with a FAQ or anything like that. But originally, U.S. Marshal has this level up ability where you can get the second mutation. You don't get a second bonus for the same mutation, but it won't kill you. And the U.S. Marshal also has a certain skill set where the more mutations you have, the more damage you do, the more powerful you become. I actually play a U.S. Marshal in one of my campaigns, and he's just a blob of a mess. He's disgusting. He has 2 heads, a third eye on one of the heads. He has a tentacle mustache. He has a growth on his leg. He has, oh God, I forget what else, but he's disgusting. I've had to have a few mutations just removed from him because some of them are detrimental. Some will help you. Like the tentacle mustache will actually intimidate shop owners, and so you get everything at a discounted price. Mark's character has this, but like the growth on the leg of the U.S. Marshal actually slows him down, so he has 1 less movement. And then the 2 heads is kind of like it's good and bad. So with 2 heads, I can equip 2 hats, which can give me 2 different bonuses. But if I ever roll 6 for movement, the 2 heads argue with each other, and I don't move at all. So so it's good and bad. And then some of the other mutations are just straight up good, like I said, or and some of them are like really bad.
What about just different worlds? You talk about the expansion that's coming down the line, the Conquistador one, which I am very excited about. For what's the timeline looking on that, and just what other sort of different ones with the Forbidden Fortress and stuff are out there?
All right, well, I'll just go over some of the other worlds that you can go to so far. Like Caverns of Cinder, it's basically like traveling to hell. It's just lava, fire landscape. There's monsters and demons there. Tradera it's like a World War I area with these aliens fighting, but the Darkstone has corrupted them to such a degree where they're all incredibly mutated. The war is ongoing. It just won't stop, and none of the countries will back down, and it's just devastation. And it's kind of like a cautionary tale of what could happen to Earth if we continue to allow the Darkstone to take over. Blasted Wastes is kind of like an alien prison desert planet. So it's kind of like Mad Max, but with aliens. And that's where there's also like a barter town. You can travel to towns in the Blasted Waste. So it's not Cowboy Town, but a town run by aliens. And
is that where we've stopped? On our last game, we vacationed somewhere to pick up.
We were about to visit it, and then James and I have visited it in our world, and that's how my character picked up an alien slave in an auction. And so now I have this permanent follower who I don't have to pay every mission because he's not a hired hand. He's a slave. And he also gets a bonus because he's not a human, he's an alien, so he gets like a strength bonus or something like that. I forget. We haven't played in so long. Actually, I haven't even had a chance to let him join us. That was like the last thing we did.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to using him whenever it is that we get a chance to play again. So Forbidden Fortress, which is the one that I originally backed, instead of it being in the Wild West, it takes place in feudal Japan. And it's like, what if the Darkstone was discovered in Japan back when there were all the samurai and everything? And so it's huge civil war. It's kind of like that perfect next step, since the Wild West and feudal Japan are so linked together anyway, with all of the stories basically being the same. The world is not that different. It's just the weapons you use. And then so like another place that you can go to is like the Forest of the Dead, which is like all ghosts and spirits, and you can actually fight your former heroes there, and it's just really bizarre. Like anybody who died, you can play them again. It's awesome and really bizarre. And then what you were hinting at is something called Shadows of Brimstone Adventures, which is the next thing that's coming out even before COVID, even before the outbreak and everything that's going on with the pandemic. It was still a long ways off, but now all of the factories that manufacture that stuff take place in China. All of shipping worldwide, obviously, is just out the window until all of this gets straightened out. So that is delayed, I assume, indefinitely. I don't know exactly what's going to be fixed there. On Kickstarter, they've had very few updates, so it's
weird.
Yeah. But what they're doing now is, instead of cowboys, instead of samurai or ninjas or anything like that, you can either play as Spanish conquistadors or you can play as Vikings. And the Viking thing is really cool because it's like, now we've got Skyrim and we can bring it to the table, just like we always wanted to do. We can play Skyrim together. And then the conquistadors is something I was really looking forward to doing, and I was super excited for, because I like conquistadors. It's the kind of thing that's not explored that much. They were my favorite characters in that awful Pirates of the Caribbean movie. And there's a lot of that, like Ponce de Leon references and stuff like that. And they actually even have them really focused on the jungles of Jargano. So it's them basically going against the Aztec snake people. So it's almost like life is recreating the history there, except for now it's with a Darkstone twist.
That's one of the ones that I was most interested in with you tell me about it, just with our previous interest in shows like Lucha Underground and just how big, you were alluding to it earlier in the show in terms of Hero Quest. Like, a lot of these games, your enjoyment level is how much you can get into the role-playing side of it.
Yep. And,
all of us, and I would assume if you're listening to this show, can lean pretty heavily into the role-play side of things. And so that, the more that you put into it, the more you're going to get out of a game like this, with just embracing the lore and just really having fun with the kinds of characters that you can create. So that Conquistador one just sounds super fun.
Yeah, and that's actually even one of the criticisms people have about Shadows of Brimstone is there's no campaign. All the quests are very separate. It's kind of up to you what it is that you want to do next. For you and me, awesome. And actually Mark and myself also, we have no problem with that. We create our own narrative, we create our own stories, and we just jump to what fits our characters. And there have been people on Board Game Geek that have actually created a campaign, which is really cool. So if you want to, download their campaign and their rules and how it is that they visit towns and towns remaining permanent, so you're not like randomly creating what the town will look like and everything. It's like, if you visit that part on the map, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think they call it like hex crawl or something like that. It's not the kind of thing that I've checked out. I feel it's a lot of extra work that I don't need for a game that already has a ton of bookkeeping.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the way that the three of us have been playing the game together, and how I play with my family, or when I play it on my own too. It's like, I like letting the story just sort of unravel for me. I'm reading a book for the first time. I don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I think of it as in a way of like doing an old like episodic Western. Like, this time we're playing, this is the mission, this is what we're doing. And it'll take us, it could be 15 minutes, it could be hours. And let's just knock it out. Here's the concise story. Like, the miner's daughter got lost down the well. Better go find her. What? Aliens? Gotta kill them.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is wild.
Yeah, and I feel like certain things end up becoming reoccurring, and then we target those specific quests. Like, James created an entire backstory for his character that has to do with the Scafford Gang, which is this infamous gang of mutants that you can fight in Shadows of Brimstone, and they have very specific villain pieces for that. And so, whenever we've come across them in our quest randomly, we've kind of built it into the narrative that's like, oh, they're after Cap Abercrombie again,
Condom.
Exactly. And it's like, because I forget, I think you served with them in the military or something like that.
Or maybe I did. Well, like the whole thing is like, did he really though?
Yeah, that's the other well, at least with our quest, our characters are gray to say the least, whether or not they're good or bad. And there's a lot of mystery between the two characters and they don't know each other that well. But I mean, that's what I love about the game. I mean, it's real sandboxy, but that's right up my alley. I really like that. I know a lot of people who also don't like a lot of dice and things like that. Shadows of Brimstone is all dice. So if you got a problem with the randomization, if you have a problem with that's how combat is, might not be for you. Also, this game has one of the biggest footprints of any game that I've owned. I know people that play Gloomhaven kind of say the same thing as far as just organization and stuff like that. So not only are you going to invest in this game, you're going to have to invest in like organizational tools. Like I have this binder, which holds all of the rule books for the game so far and like character sheets. This is one thing that I have for us to reference when we're doing it. I have multiple mini binders for hero cards, monster cards, things like that. I have big sets of just where all the playing cards take place. The miniatures that I've assembled, which took up the entire summer of 2018, and I'm not even done. They're stored in different boxes. I'm looking towards a better way of storing them, but I mean, I've said this to James before. It's like I don't even tell people that I'm into board games anymore. I'm into Shadows of Brimstone. Like
You're in
that's
the Brimstone
my life.
business.
Yeah, I'm in the Brimstone business, and business is booming, and it's not stopping anytime soon. And that's because the game is so huge and it takes so long to organize and put together and play. Honestly, that's why I don't mind about Kickstarter delays and things like that, because it doesn't affect me just because I have so much to work with. And it's like, you know what? I wouldn't even be playing with that stuff anyway. I'm not assembling any conquistadors. I haven't even touched the Forbidden Fortress stuff. And I mean, that's on me at this point. But I mean, I've moved around a couple of times. Every time I've moved, I've hated becoming a fan of Shadows of Brimstone because it's such a bitch to just move the Brimstone stuff, let alone anything else.
Well, I'm glad you stuck with it because, just talking about this with y'all, I really want to play with you. I want to revisit. I want to get a group campaign going here with, the Best Damn Nerd Show going. And, we're going to take a quick break. But on the other side, we're going to talk about the characters that we already have created, the sort of the stuff that we've gotten into together, because some of the funny stories and the crazy things that have happened in Shadows of Brimstone are some of my favorite things just to talk about in regards to the game. So on the other side, we'll talk about our characters and some of our favorite moments coming up on the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. Bimbo Jimbo here with Jeff Budd and Mark Truex, and we are talking Shadows of Brimstone. And what I want to do now is get into the characters that we decided to make. And Jeff, I know you've played a bunch, obviously. You are the owner of this game. You are the key to all the fun that we've had with Shadows of Brimstone. I've only gotten to play one character, and I play a gambler, I believe is the technical name for the class.
Yeah.
I play it with Jeff, who is the
Frontier Doc.
Frontier Doctor is the name of the class. But yeah, the gambler class I always gravitate towards because growing up, my all-time favorite Western movie was, and Mark probably remembers this, was Gunfight at the OK Corral, starring Kirk Douglas as Doc Holliday. Loved Doc Holliday growing up. Took every opportunity if we had to do like a biography on a famous person. I've written at least one paper on Doc Holliday and just his life and stuff like that. He's just my favorite character from the Old West was always Doc Holliday. So when Jeff told me about the gambler class, I was like, well, got to do that. And so very much so modeled him off of Doc Holliday and also off of like Jack Swift from, Red Dead Revolver and everything like that. So he's very sort of an amalgamation of that. And he's a con man, fought in the Civil War, but didn't really want to fight. It's very sort of nebulous background, and the rumors are that he got the nickname Cap because supposedly he was a captain in the military. It's not even true. He just sort of like stole a officer's uniform and got the nickname that way. So he's just this very duplicitous, sort of debonair character with a lot of panache to him. People gravitate to. He's very charismatic, but he's a con man. He's a shifty guy. sort of like a more, if you played Red Dead Redemption 2, a more badass Trelawney type character.
He is Trelawney.
Yeah, in the Red Dead series. So a really, really fun play style. You know, you were talking about the use of the dice and everything like that. One of the cool things about him is some of the abilities you get is, you know, to sort of create your own luck, a la Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight, and sort of it helps get you out of some really tough situations or make some really cool stuff happen. You know, I know I've been ready to sort of replace a die roll for both myself or you should we need it to make something cool happen. But I really love playing that gambler character, and he pairs really nicely with Jeff, with your Frontier Doctor character, if you want to tell us a little bit about him, who I both love and hate, which is why they're a great pairing.
He was designed for you to loathe, at least to a certain degree. His name is Fabius B. Qyburn, and the name is taken from two different characters that James is completely disgusted by. The last name Qyburn, obviously, is from the Hand of the Queen in Game of Thrones. Cersei's ousted maester. He never graduated. I'm a big Qyburn fan in A Song of Ice and Fire, and so I definitely modeled my character after that, where it scientific, kind of like Herbert West. You know, it's like no ethics or morals will stand in the way as far as the scientific discovery that he's reached, and the fact that he's a medical doctor just makes it more disgusting because of the Hippocratic Oath. And then he also served in the Civil War, but what sort of weird things he was doing with the people that were at his disposal is anybody's guess. And then his first name and his middle initial, Fabius B, it comes from Fabius Bile, who is an apothecary in the Emperor's Children, which is one of the legions in Warhammer 40,000 that betrayed the Emperor. And he is a really disgusting son of a bitch.
Absolutely vile.
Yeah, exactly. The bile rhymes with vile, and that's exactly what he is. It has to do with mutations and changes. He's completely fallen to the chaotic god Slanesh, which is all about pain and pleasure, and it's just gross. And that is Fabius Bile. So Fabius B. Qyburn, he's a doctor. He's a veteran at this point as well, and he is just a disgusting individual. And the two of them, they've been heroic because of the circumstances that have been, they've been thrown in, but it's not necessarily that is who he is by nature. And it's just been a lot of fun role-playing him with you.
Yeah, Cap Abercrombie tolerates the Sawbones, as he calls them, but
you said it
him to a great degree.
Yeah, you said it great once, that the two of them are just a couple of pariahs, and it's this guy or nobody. There's nobody else in the world to watch your back, and it's like, even though you can't fully trust them, it's all you got.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we'll get into some of the adventures and things that have happened between them, but it is really fun. Again, the amount of role playing that you're willing to put into this game. And I know you created him with sort of my proclivities in mind and how I would react. And you did it masterfully. And it's really, because you do some really creepy, weird stuff. Like, he's collecting samples from these monsters, and Jeff literally in front of me is scribbling in his little notebook and not telling me what he's writing down. I'm like, God, this guy's a freaking creep, man. Like, I'm a con man and a lying gambler, but at least like I'm on the side of humanity.
You are human at the end of the day. We can't necessarily say that about Dr. Qyburn anymore.
Yeah, and Jeff will just go, how interesting. He's like writing in his book.
Yeah, I can't do it so much right now because we're on mic. It wouldn't sound the same, but I do a voice also. I do a voice for Qyburn, and it's just, and yeah, it's like Bill Murray's character in the Royal Tannenbaums, where it's just like, how interesting, how bizarre, There was a time, just real quick, just one random adventure. We were fighting vampires in space, and James actually became infected and was going to become a vampire. And it was within my power to heal him and make him human again. But Qyburn was like sort of hesitant to do so.
Wanted to see what happened.
He wanted, and yeah, not to see a vampire. He just wanted to see the mutation. He wanted to see how it changed you. Eventually, of course, I did. I helped Abercrombie, because even though you could do a vampire hero and have your character have vampire skills, there's setbacks and everything. It's like if you play Skyrim or really any of the Elder Scrolls games, there's pluses and minuses to being a vampire.
You know what's funny?
And you just didn't feel like doing it.
it wouldn't have been totally out of Cap Abercrombie's character to be a vampire.
It kind of would have been cool.
His carousing and saloon going, and the love of just that whole social life, and how he interacts with other people, and they're drawn to him, which is very vampire-esque. He's a bit of a ham. I definitely have my Cap voice too, and just the sort of the over the top outlandish nature. But I love those adventures. I'd forgotten about that vampire one. That was a toughie, but we that
was one of our those vampires are tough to fight. Yeah, we were on the derelict spaceship, so they were space vampires. And damn, yeah, they're tough. And we had a couple of henchmen with us. They're dead.
Yeah,
we didn't get them back. Yeah, I think we have the mule. That's all we've got.
Ugh,
and
mule.
Never mind. I forget what else I was gonna say about it, but yeah.
Mark, what kind of character did you go with? Because Jeff and I had an idea for what we thought you should play. You did not go that route, but what did you pick?
I went strong and silent type. Went lawman, a little more mature of a character, and paired with Jeff's orphan. It was very much like a True Grit kind of story.
It's very
of us just going through. I wasn't very boisterous with personality, but I had my heart going in the right direction, and I was very stern with the justice. So
Mark is a solid role player with it too. And we're just talking about like they're almost like a Old West Batman and Robin, and it's just an incredibly awful experience for the orphan, just all the things he's been exposed to. We're almost like Rick and Morty in that sense too, and the orphan is just exposed to all of these awful things. And we had that one henchman who was with us for a little while who's just abusive to the orphan and would just say mean things to him.
Lee, I think it was, but he was a good chap until the brain worms got him.
Yeah, he ended up getting brain slugs that made his head explode in front of the orphan.
Now I'm going to stop you right there. Explain the brain slugs and how this comes about. And I don't know if you have it in front of you to where you can read how the description of the brain slugs is, but
yeah. So while he's looking that while he's looking that up, like one of the parts of this, it's almost kind of like a dungeon crawler in a way when you're going through the mine shafts and exploring the realm that is Shadows of Brimstone. And on each tile that builds out the map, you can basically explore, see if there's like hidden treasure or things lurking in the shadows and whatnot. And so when you have a henchman, you basically get extra turns of rolling the dice and moving a character and so forth. So I was just using our henchman who was a good guy. He just kind of hung out with me. We shared a drink here and there. And
the two of them would get drunk constantly.
How old's this orphan?
No, not the orphan. The henchman and the lawman would get drunk.
Oh, that's the orphan.
The orphan's probably like, I don't know, 13 maybe. Okay. That's kind of how I picture him.
At a certain time, a man just needs the company of other men. You know what I mean?
I think I know what you're saying.
So I was using him to explore just something very nonchalant, like, I'll look under this rock, and just brain slugs.
Oh my God.
And we lost the poor bastard.
Dude, so I know Jeff's looking it up right now.
But I've got it, yeah.
Oh, you've got it? Okay, go ahead. And then I want to bring up one of the ones that I think that we have faced that I'm looking forward to Cap dueling with at some point down the line. But go ahead. So read the brain slug scenario.
So yeah, if you have a henchman, what you can do is instead of risking your own characters to like look through a tunnel or anything like that, you can send a henchman to do it instead. And then you roll a die to see, hey, was it all right, or does something bad happen to them? And there's a very good chance that something bad happens to them.
Very much.
And if it does, they give you 66 different options of what horrible thing could happen to them, because you roll 2 dice and then those are the 2 numbers. So we rolled 63. We got the mind worm infestation. And it goes, clutching his head in agony, the henchman falls to the floor as the mind worms devour his brain. And then all of us had to make a spirit test, or we took 3 hits and 3 horror hits, because I think the brain slugs then attacked us after they ruptured his skull. Oh. And then, of course, just the idea of seeing that it shakes a man.
Yeah. And it was we just completely wasted him. He hung out with us for a couple missions too.
Yeah, he was a part of the team.
He was a part of the team. Definitely, the Tres Caballeros, and we just wasted him. We're just like, hey, look down that tunnel real quick. Dead. Like, oh.
But that's the beauty of the game, though, is that sort of that creeping sort of vulnerability of those henchman characters adds to the experience. Because obviously you want your characters to live on and continue on and everything like that. But now, especially with Cap Abercrombie and the Sawbones, I am so flush with money that we have a whole posse rolling with us now. Like, we have the most expensive wagon. They're all like decked out with everything, and it's we're living that sweet life, as sweet as it can be in the West. But a lot of them are gonna die. But not all of them are gonna make it. They're just
our next adventure, they're probably gonna die. Yeah, we have like a full posse. Also, the way it works is depending on how many people are playing, the difficulty of the game will also scale. And a henchman doesn't count as like a full character. So with the three of us playing like the henchman, Mark's character, and my character, it's still a 2-player difficulty. So it's like an advantage to have them because it doesn't increase the difficulty and you have an extra guy backing you up. But for every 3 henchmen you have, it counts as like an extra person playing. So James, I think you and I we have enough henchmen where it bumped up the difficulty level.
Yeah, because we have like the standard henchman ranch hand or whatever we have.
Well, the ranch hand's not even a standard one, but like he has his own bonuses. You have the senorita or the bandita.
The saloon girl, right? Or whatever she is.
No,
the wounded dove.
Oh yeah. That's right. It's a saloon girl, but her character we made her like she's a bandita. And then we have a mule.
Yes,
so that's 3 right there, and I feel like
we have the blacksmith.
And we have the blacksmith.
Dagger.
Who's great. Yeah, I like the blacksmith.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to see what happens. But one of the things, I don't know if this happened already or it happened to one of our first people, but the duel with death, where one of the things that you can roll there is that death, like the literal embodiment of death, who's a gunslinger, just shot one of the henchmen and killed him. Like, I'm pretty sure that happened in one of our games.
The undead gunslinger, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's I have his figurine because he's an actual character that you can face off against, and they have quests against him too. Yeah, he will duel you, and he's a tough son of a bitch. I actually haven't even fought him yet. I don't think I brought him to the table. I have gone against undead gunslingers, just not the undead gunslinger.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, he killed one of our henchmen. That's right. We've talked about going after him too, just to see what it's like. Have Abercrombie duel him.
Yeah, exactly. Want him. I got a 6 pocketed for him coming his way. But yeah, so just crazy stuff like that can happen. One thing that when I knew we were going to do this episode, it's a story not really relating to the gameplay so much as it is relating to Mark, I love you to death, and just your reaction in your early playing of Shadows of Brimstone. Jeff, can you regale us with the tale of Mark first playing Brimstone and his joy turning to jealousy at the drop of a hat?
All right. Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you'll remember this, but you'll probably nod your head in agreement that this is who you are. Every time you defeat a group of monsters, you get to draw a loot card to see what it is that you've collected as a bonus for winning the battle. Mm-hmm. And so Mark drew a loot card, and he's like, hey, 50 gold. And he has this huge smile on his face. Then I drew my loot card, and I go, hey, 150 gold. And Mark's smile just completely flipped upside down. I saw jealous Mark Truex in real time. It was hilarious.
What does the orphan need with 150 gold?
Dude, they need it more than you.
I'm taking care of him. I'm Odacut.
I needed to fix my wonky eyes that I because my character's all messed up.
Oh yeah, I guess that's a good point too. Is like, what mutations have you acquired in game that you really like? Like, I know, like Cap Abercrombie has the Child of the Void mutation, which essentially is the Total Recall Quado coming out of your chest mutation, to the point where I even armed it with a special pistol that you get in the mutant quarter just for him to use.
Yeah.
So that's
and you have to name him. That's part of the game. They tell you have to name him.
Yeah, we named him Chip.
He's a character. He helps out
in honor of Chip Chipperson. But what are some what are some of your favorite mutations, Jeff, that you've gotten, be it with me or with Mark or whoever?
Well, the orphan one is kind of funny just because it's so random. Because not only do you get random mutations, but if you like fall in battle, but you're not killed because the other person wins the combat, you have to roll on the injury chart. And you have this permanent injury until you like go and get it like surgery to fix it. So I have grown over eyes where there's skin covering my eyes, which screw up. Like I can't do like critical hits with a firearm anymore because I can't aim that well. But I also have a gouged eye from my injuries. So the upper part of his face is just a mess. This 13-year-old boy is just
A real horror
disgusting
show.
looking. Yeah.
It was the
God.
rats, the mutant rats.
Yeah, the rats who killed both of us. I don't want to fix it. I want to just leave him like that. This just poor, pathetic kid with his
Just
gouged, grown over eyes.
Just a wretch. You're what Wesley describes to Humperdinck in Princess Bride. Dear God,
Yeah.
what is that thing?
Well, the orphan's ears are perfectly fine.
There it is. He's bluffing. Mark, what about you? What mutation? You mentioned the tentacle mustache, Mark.
Yeah,
Is
I
there
got the
anything-
tentacle mustache as my mutation because I am greedy for the darkstone. I want
and the
it. I
gold
want to.
We've established.
Yeah, I want to upgrade all my pistols. I'm going definitely down like this gunslinger kind of route where I'm dual wielding pistols and just laying waste, blasting things off. And so I'm trying to upgrade it as best I can. So I need darkstone. I need it. And unfortunately, it has its cost. But my tentacle mustache is going to help me save a penny on that cost, if you would, because I get a barter because I refuse to pay full price in game and in real life.
I would love for Mark to play with Cap Abercrombie and Qyburn, just so you can see, Mark, the ease at which I make money and just I could satisfy your every desire with that money, Mark. It's stupid, like how much the money engine can work for the gambler if things go your way. But other favorite moments from playing, Jeff, because I know you've played with like your family and stuff too. I think your brother got into some pretty funny stuff early on.
It was the first time we ever went to a town, so we had never experienced what it was like before. I didn't even have the figurines assembled yet. We were using tokens and like coins for the monsters. I was playing the Drifter, which is very much like Clint Eastwood's character from the spaghetti westerns. He even looks just like him in the illustration. And my brother is the Outlaw, so he's just permanently always a criminal, has a couple of guns, has a sawed-off shotgun. We were hanging out in town, and then everybody else in the party was ready to move on, which just means that like you're camping outside, you can't interact with the stores anymore, but you're not in danger anymore. But my brother is like, oh, I want to visit one more place. And he decides to spend an
Heard that
additional night.
before.
Yeah, how many times, right? So he spends an additional night there. That just so happens to be when he rolls the dice to see what happens next. Monsters overrun the town. Demons everywhere. They're tearing people to shreds. Roll your dice to see what happens to you. He ends up getting like slashed and shredded up. He doesn't get killed. He was able to make it out of there, but he stays just one extra night and he completely got fucked up. It was hilarious. But yeah, he'll never do that again.
What happened to where we ended up in the haunted town is something that was pretty cool, but I forget the exact details of how that came about, because the haunted town is one of those expanded things that can come up.
Yeah. All right. So like I was saying before, you have to roll for travel hazards to see what happens when you're going from the quest to a town. And the travel hazard that we rolled, it was this like river that we couldn't pass. And so instead of going to the town that we wanted to, we were redirected to this small town. And then we had to roll to see what kind of town it was. It was a haunted town, which means that they had these ghosts there. It messes with you every night that you're staying there in the hotel. But it gives you the option for your next quest can be, I forget what the generic layout is, but it's to help exorcise the demons and free the town from being haunted. And so you and I opted to do that, of course. That was one of the heroic things that our characters did. And it's just sort of like, and it's just sort of this fate, you know, like that we were blocked by that river and we couldn't go where we wanted to, and we were redirected to this town. It's just like there was this divine hand that was sort of guiding our characters. And even though we're not necessarily heroic by nature, you know, we're still tools of perhaps a greater benevolent force.
I just thought it was cool because that is something that you would see in a Western TV show or movie. That's like, oh yeah, we got redirected, and of course, the town that we get redirected to is this haunted place where we have to deal with that situation. You know, that it was just very cool how that played out.
And that's what I'm talking about as far as how intuitive this game is. It's like things that stack up together. It syncs up. It makes sense. It's not as random as it sounds. I mean, I've heard like weird stories of people like, you know, fighting a dinosaur on the spaceship and all this bizarre stuff, but everything from a narrative standpoint always seems to just work with us. And yeah. I love it. I mean, our adventures that we've played together, the quests that I do on my own or the quests that I play with my family, it's like I would read those stories. I would watch those movies. I mean, it's like it would be so much fun. I mean, that's what I've really seen with like my preacher-led like posse is they're going up against Belial, that dark demon prince, but like there's been so many like subtle little quests and hints that have kind of led to that confrontation beforehand. There was an assassination attempt on the Indian scout by like this. Well, I say that it was from like this cultist because we had just fought cultists in the town, and it's like we even went against one of the Elder Ones, which is like a Cthulhu type monster, and you have to draw what is like the purpose of that Elder One. It turns out he was a prison warden for Belial.
Nice.
And so it's like that we had gotten caught up in that
and
mess.
that was just a random drawing.
Yeah, it's a random drawing because there's a few things it can do. So it's like, oh, he was just trying to wipe us out because somehow we were going to be led to the unlocking of Belial. He didn't want us to confront him in the first place, didn't think that we could probably handle it. And so it's like, I love all of that just syncing up together.
Yeah, and that's the thing where, you know, when you don't have a campaign setting, that you can make your own campaign based on what happens in situations like that. So Belial becomes your big bad. The Scafford gang in ours is sort of the big bad that we're kind of chasing, along with the undead gunmen and things of that nature. As the game unfolds, you choose what your own narrative is going to be, which is really, really cool. Mark, do you have any favorite moments that have happened that we haven't talked about with your character playing with the orphan and everything?
Well, we touched on it briefly, which was the rat incident, where basically Jeff and I did this whole campaign, and we got in and we ended up going against the big bad. Usually they're always like the penultimate finish of these campaigns is you go against like a boss level kind of bad guy. And I forget what it was, but it was some like BDSM satanic thing, like unholy, like to all hell. And we not only did that show up, but like a bunch of 4 other minions, and somehow by like the skin of our teeth, we were able to kill him. We like jumped ahead and killed him instead of his minions. So we lucked out, and all of his minions disappear after you kill like the big boss. I think it was something like the Hellraiser or.
Yeah, I forget his name. He's like Flesh Stitcher or something like that. He's like this alien scientist who, he carves you up and experiments on you and stuff like that. And those drone guys that he have are like past people that he had experimented on. It's bizarre.
And so like we got through that, and we we're like, oh, thank God. All right, now we just need to back out of this mine that we're down. And as we start leading out, all of a sudden mutant rats engulf us, and they are so damn fast, and we're so weak from the battle with this guy that I have to look on as the orphan is getting eaten up. I'm just trying to blow off as many rats as I can to stay alive, and ultimately we both succumb to them.
Yeah, we ended up losing that mission, which is how we suffered those injuries.
Yeah, and then like I think when we got to the town so we could try to heal ourselves, there was like a sandstorm or a tornado or something,
like,
and
ruined the hospital that you needed to
go
it
was like a void twister that like shot us out of there. Like we had to like flee the town immediately, so we just got stuck. Yeah, we were completely screwed up. That was a low time for our group. That's why we decided to flee Earth, I think, and just try our best in the blasted wastes.
Yep.
Jeff, any other favorite moments from gameplay that we haven't touched on yet?
Not even so much a favorite moment, but one of my favorite characters, and the character I wanted to play the most was the Drifter. Because I'm a huge fan of spaghetti westerns. I love Clint Eastwood's cowboy character, the man with no name. What I like is when you start a character, you can draw one of 3 cards that's like a particular like subclass for that class. The Drifter, you actually get 2. You get to pick one of the 3, and then there's an additional one that you get, which is the Drifter's Secret. And I'm not going to say what it is because you really need to play as the Drifter to get it. It is awesome. And it changes the play style. It changes the entire background of your story. It's the same secret no matter what. There's only the one. But it's a damn good secret. And he's probably still one of my favorite characters. The Preacher, I think, that I'm playing is my favorite character. But the Drifter is awesome. I really like him a lot.
The Preacher is definitely a character. I mean, obviously, given my background, as being somebody very strongly in faith, I was always attracted to. And, he was a villain in this one movie, but I never remember the name of it. But Bob Mitchum played this Western preacher in this Western film where he had a derringer hidden in his Bible. And that always just stuck out to me in terms of just, what a cool character that was, even though he was a bad guy in that movie. But the Preacher character is definitely one that I've gravitated towards as well. But we are going to talk more about other characters that we would want to play, expansions that we want to see, and maybe just things that we want to experience in the game as well on the other side. One more segment, talking Shadows of Brimstone on the Best Damn Nerd Show. Welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. We are wrapping up our talk about Shadows of Brimstone here. Bimbo Jimbo alongside Jeff Budd and Mark Truex. And I want to end tonight sort of talking about what we would like to still experience with Shadows of Brimstone. I'm going to lead us off because Jeff and I, big fans of the movie The Quick and the Dead, starring Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio. And we sort of have fantasy booked these characters that we would like to port from The Quick and the Dead into Shadows of Brimstone. I would very much so like to play the Gene Hackman style character in Shadows of Brimstone, just because Jeff and I have had a lot of fun sort of just talking about that movie and just sort of interpreting that movie in interesting ways. So bringing Quick and the Dead to Shadows of Brimstone is something that I would love to do, but how would that even work, Jeff?
The way I would do it if we were those various characters, Gene Hackman and Russell Crowe would both definitely be gunslingers, and they have alternative sculpts for certain characters, especially popular ones. So I have 2 different gunslinger miniatures that we could use. I could always proxy a different cowboy anyway. Yeah. You can be everybody could be the same class if you want them to be. They don't necessarily recommend it because, it's kind of fun if everybody's something different because different skill sets and stuff. But if we're doing like something specific from a movie, I feel that they would both be gunslingers. Sharon Stone could be a gunslinger also, and you would just use the female equivalent. Another thing I love about Shadows of Brimstone is every character has a male version, every character has a female version. If you want to play a guy of any kind of character, you can do it. Same with any girl. I think that's something that's sort of a shortcoming with some other dungeon crawlers and stuff like that. So I like that it's all the same. And then they don't change the stats. Female lawman is as tough as a male lawman. That's what the lawman is. And so that's really cool. And then with a couple of them, they change it. If you're a guy, you're not a saloon girl, you're the piano player. And so all of that is really cool from just like, a player's standpoint. I really like that they have all those options. But yeah, Sharon Stone, maybe you could do a gunslinger as well. They also have just the generic cowboy, which I think is kind of cool. So like maybe she would just be a cowgirl. And then the kid, I would make him orphan. Yeah. And then the orphan can grow up to be any other class, and then you could have him grow up to be the gunslinger class. So he could be orphan or certain orphan skills, and then he would have gunslinger skills as well too, which would be pretty cool. The thing about the Quick and the Dead is they all kind of have a similar skill set, so all of the characters would be roughly the same. I guess like the Native American guy who wouldn't be killed by like a white man's bullet, you could make him like the Indian scout if you wanted to, but he's really more of a gunslinger as well. He doesn't have any of the scouting skills like that character does. But that's probably
it would be fun to sort of have just that role-playing dynamic, though.
Well, and that's exactly why we would want to do it. And then the one thing I would do with Russell Crowe's character, if that's the character I was playing, if you were playing Gene Hackman, is even though the gunslinger isn't inherently religious, you can go to the church and you can get the holy keyword or whatever so that you have those bonuses and you fall under certain categories there. So I would do that with him. I mean, if I wanted to, I could also make him the preacher and just make it where Russell Crowe just refuses to use firearms, which is what he was trying to do in the movie. But there's so many times when he is wielding a gun that it's like, you know what, you got to make him a gunslinger. Because
I guess we could always just flip it. We could just house rule it and flip it like midway through whatever our campaign was.
That's true too. Yeah, you could change it up and then at the end make him like a U.S. Marshal or something, or a lawman. Yeah.
Mark, how about you? What are some things that you want to experience in the game or still do?
What I'd really like to do is play into some more of the expansions that really change up the nature of the game, or rather the aesthetic of it, which is the Forbidden Fortress that we've mentioned a couple times. We're going feudal Japan. Something about it just makes me think of Legends of the Five Rings, which is a thing that I really enjoy.
Yes.
Yeah, love L5R and the whole thing of like, and because it's not just samurai and things like that, but it's also mysticism and dark magic and all these things. And something just kind of reminds me of that when you think of Shadows of Brimstone in a way, and getting to play as a samurai character coming in there and playing in that world is just really intriguing and something I want to do. Like, I love samurai lore and all that. So I can't wait, because I know you got the pieces.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah, I have the game. I have the cards. I have it all.
Let's play it.
Well, I mean, I think part of it with Forbidden Fortress was that was the one where I was kind of holding out, where maybe we would just all do it when we were all in town together, because we hadn't started any campaign. And it's like, we'll just all start a brand new campaign together.
Three Samurai.
as opposed to do a different cowboy thing. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different characters I want to be in Forbidden Fortress.
Because they've done a few expansions within the Forbidden Fortress now too, right?
Oh, I got it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, don't worry, I got it. I paid for it. I got it. Because in the Wild West, one thing I would want to do is like I want to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I would want the Drifter as Clint. I would want the second gunslinger miniature to be Angel Eyes, and I would want the Bandito to be Tuco. I also would like to be the Darkstone Shaman. It's this Native American who gets to use Darkstone to like he uses it. He's sort of under control of it, so he gets to do like these cool powers. He can transform into different animals, like a bear and stuff like that. So I think that, and there's a bear miniature. Druid. Yeah. He's that's exactly what it kind of reminds me of. So it's like I'd love to do something like that. I wanted to do a story where it was like a Darkstone Shaman and an Indian Scout, and the Indian Scout was like somebody who was a part of the tribe, but it kind of abandoned those ways, and it kind of fallen into white man's culture, and like maybe his brother was the Darkstone Shaman or his sister or something like that, and just I don't know, the two of them together, and it'd be like oil and water. Like it would have been really cool to just do that narrative. Another thing I wanted to do was
like Matt and Jeff Hardy.
Brother Nero, that was unselfish. I wanted to do like Lupin the Third, so I would have had like Lupin the Third be the gambler. I would have had the Wandering Samurai for oh geez, it's been so long since I've watched that show. I think Goemon. And then I would have like the gunslinger for the Chicago guy. And then for Fujiko, I probably would have done the saloon girl. And it's like, it would have been cool to just have that group of four, but like in the Wild West and have them doing different things. And then for Forbidden Fortress, I really want to be the, the Shogun. So that like I even automatically have enlisted followers with me every time.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And then the other things I wanted to do is I wanted to do like Inuyasha. So I wanted to be the monk Moroku. And then I was probably going to use the sorcerer because he has like this slash move to be Inuyasha. It would have been like Iron Reamer Soul Stealer. And then I would have had the priestess for Kagome. And then probably the ninja for Sango, like when she's in her demon hunter outfit. And it would have been cool to do. Oh, and then they even have the Kitsune, the fox demon, as a playable character. And that would have been Shippo. So yeah, I could have done all 5 of them also. And then the sorcerer in Forbidden Fortress controls earth, fire, wind, water. Could have had him been Aang, the Avatar. So like, yeah, there's sky's the limit with Forbidden Fortress too. We got a lot of options there.
Yeah, that
now
is
can
definitely...
you play as an Oni?
You can't
Forbidden
play as...
Fortress, or do you just battle them?
No, the only benevolent demon is the Kitsune so far. Which I mean, that's kind of like Japanese folklore. I think they were more like mischievous, if anything, but like they're friends of humans. So yeah, the fox demons are helping the humans against the Oni and the other monsters. But I think that's the only inhuman character you can play. Off the top of my head, it is. Yeah.
You know, we've done a lot of different exploring in our campaign and everything like that of other worlds, and there's definitely a lot to do with that. But I almost kind of would, one of the things I want to do is get more grounded back into the Wild West side of it and do more dealing with like the, even just straight up, standard bandit enemies and stuff like that. Even though they're mutated, the Stafford Gang or that undead army and stuff,
Yeah, and there's normal bandits. That's the outlaws who came with the Frontier Town expansion. It's just regular cowboys that you fight, because sometimes those are the other people that you're running into out there. They're not mutated. They're just your run-of-the-mill villain. And I mean, you could set the deck up where you're just having a regular Western adventure if you wanted to.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, none of the weird Darkstone stuff, but it's there are some really cool missions as I was, looking through those books. It's like, oh man, like we go back to, terra firma, as it were. We can do some pretty cool stuff. Like some of those missions with the undead army, which is sort of a Battle of the Alamo allegory with Santa Anna's army. They're very much so akin to that. They might even reference Santa Anna. I don't remember. But there's like a mission in there that I was looking at where essentially it's like your last stand, and that sounds awesome. Like I definitely want to do that one. That sounds very, very cool. But Jeff, what about you? Other things that, besides the Forbidden Fortress stuff that you still want to do in the game?
Besides all the things that I've listed, I kind of want to go werewolf hunting. And then that's another thing you can do. Instead of just being, if you get infected by a vampire, you can become a vampire hero. You can become a lichen hero as well if a werewolf bites you. where you can transform back and forth between your regular character and your werewolf character. But you're kind of a danger to others if you're in your werewolf form sometimes. I forget exactly what the rules are specifically, but it would be fun to hunt the werewolves. And then, like I also said at the beginning of the show, I'm looking forward to Shadows of Brimstone Adventures. I really want to play the Conquistadors, more so than the Vikings. I'm kind of Vikinged out with Skyrim, but the Conquistadors I'm excited for, because I don't feel like you see that enough in like pop culture games and stuff. So it'll be cool to play them. And then also, the dynamics are different in that game than the regular game. All of us are kind of playing like a pumped up individual hero who's super tough. In the Adventures game, it's more a squad of like lesser people. So you get to play as 4 different characters that all kind of work together. So it's like this conquistador group exploring together, or the Vikings exploring together. Or I almost forgot, but you can be a hit squad from Tradera. So you can be 4 Traderan veterans fighting something together. And Tradera is great because if you play the Traderan veteran, which is somebody who escaped from that World War I alien apocalypse world, you get to say which country from Tradera they're from too. And they have these different classifications, what bonuses they have. And it's really awesome. And it doesn't really play like favorites or anything like that because Tradera is just an awful place. So yeah, it's just interesting to see what all the different governments and countries are like in that world.
Man, well, I can't wait to play it again with you, Jeff, and with you, Mark. I think, for us to start a campaign together, and hopefully we'll get the rest of the nerds involved as well, as hopefully, we get this pandemic, under control and we don't end up like Tradera ourselves.
We're getting there. I mean, it's on Tabletop Simulator. I haven't played it on TTS, so I don't know how janky the controls are, but
there's just something about in person, though.
Well, I mean, that's the best because, I mean, one of the things I really love about it is, James, you and I have always played when you were visiting San Diego. So we would play like for a few days and it would just be a fun experience. And then Mark and I, we usually would play like on Friday nights. So he would just come to my place after work and the 2 of us would play a little bit after we set it up. Then we'd go grab some dinner and then we would play like long into the night and then maybe some Saturday morning before he had to go home. It was a blast. It's like that. Those fun experiences.
I just remember coming back from one of those trips and being like, talking to some of my friends who were girls, like, so what'd you do in San Diego? Did you guys like go out and drink and stuff like that? I was like, no, we just play board games. Like, yeah, but what else? Like, no, that's all we did. Like, for days on end. And it's to the point where we wouldn't really stop to eat until we were like starving.
Yeah, we were starving.
Yeah, because at the point we decided that we needed to eat, we was like almost too far gone. But that's just how it goes when you're gaming. And I miss that. And Shadows of Brimstone really provides that addictive sort of gaming experience. So as we wrap up here, Jeff, as the game master, where would you rank Shadows of Brimstone in terms of just overall board games you've played?
Oh boy. Hero Quest holds a special place in my heart, so I don't know if I can ever put anything above Hero Quest. Obviously, this game is a lot more intense and has a lot more in favor of it. Shadows of Brimstone is definitely one of my favorite games I've ever played. I've invested a lot of money in it, and I continue to back stuff on Kickstarter because I want to own all of it. I want to be able to experience all of it. I'm looking forward to... There's not a hero class I don't want to try out at some point in my life. I want to experience every single thing that the game has to offer, which is near impossible, and I want to play with as many different people as I can as well, too.
Yeah. I echo you on that. There's so many different characters that I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to do this kind of thing with. But we're going to leave it right there with Shadows of Brimstone. I'm sure we will revisit that at some point on the Best Damn Nerd Show when we talk about our campaigns and stuff that we get into. But that is going to do it for us this week. Have a great week, everyone. Remember, if you're a nerd, always say it loud and say it proud.